World War I, Voices from the Trenches. The 28th of June 1914, two bullets in Sarajevo ignite a war that will consume the world. Handshaking around a small pistol. Two gunshots echo through the narrow streets, chaos erupts. The gunpowder smoke drifts away as the scene fades to black. Animated vintage map of Europe shows alliances forming. Typewriter clicks and telegram sounds overlap with tense orchestral music. Within weeks, an entire continent prepares for war. The sound of marching boots and train whistles intensify. Men line up at recruitment offices, kissing families goodbye. Steam locomotives roar, soldiers wave from open cars. Women cry and throw flowers. Millions answer the call, unaware of the horrors that await them. Aerial shot over muddy fields in northern France. Soldiers dig trenches under rain. Distant artillery rumble is constant. Fade to a soldier's tired face, eyes reflecting firelight. German artillery crews load massive cannons. Shells arc across the horizon. The ground shakes violently. Explosions fill the screen, transition into smoke. Muddy boots step through the trench filth, rats crawling near food. Soldiers write letters home by the flickering light of a candle. The distant sound of shelling underscores the oppressive silence. Days turn into months, the trench becomes their home. And their grave, candlelight suddenly extinguishes as a shell detonates nearby. Close-up of muddy boots stepping through filth. Rats crawling near food rations. Soldiers writing letters by candlelight. The trench becomes their home and their grave. Frost covers the metal surfaces of rifles resting against the trench walls. Soldiers' breath materializes as clouds of vapor in the icy air. Rations appear frozen solid, forcing stoic suffering against the elements. In the bitter winter of 1914, even nature becomes an enemy. The wind howls across the frozen landscape, emphasizing silent, stoic suffering. Snow covers no man's land, as German and British soldiers cautiously emerge. The soft singing of Silent Night echoes in both German and English. Soldiers are seen sharing cigarettes and engaging in an impromptu game of football. For one brief moment, humanity returns. The camera pans upward to show peaceful, falling snow before all sound abruptly cuts to silence. Massive field guns fire in a synchronized rhythm, creating visible waves of destruction. The sky is choked with smoke as industrial warfare dominates the landscape. Industrial warfare where machines, not men, decide fate. The camera tilts down to reveal fields of craters stretching as far as the eye can see. Panic ensues as thick, sickly yellow-green clouds of poison gas roll across the trenches. Men struggle to pull gas masks over their faces in frantic effort. Several soldiers fail to secure their masks in time and collapse, choking. April 1915, the first poison gas attack at Ypres. A new horror is born. The scene concludes with a close-up on a discarded, gas-soaked mask lying forgotten in the mud. Vast, snow-covered plains of Poland dominate the frame under a blizzard. Endless columns of soldiers struggle forward, marching through deep snowdrifts. In the east, millions clash across frozen wastelands. The camera flies over a distant village engulfed in flames, illuminated by artillery fire. In the east, millions clash across frozen wastelands. Soldiers struggle forward through deep snowdrifts. A distant village burns under artillery fire, lighting the snowy sky. Narrator contrasts the fronts as the camera flies over the devastation. At Gallipoli, the sea crashes violently against rugged cliffs. Allied ships bombard Turkish defenses offshore. Soldiers storm the beaches under withering machine gun fire. Waves wash over fallen soldiers. The campaign ends in tragedy. Waves crash violently against rugged Gallipoli cliffs while Allied ships bombard Turkish defenses. Soldiers storm the beaches under withering machine gun fire. At Gallipoli, bravery meets futility. The campaign ends in tragedy. The camera zooms on fallen soldiers as waves wash over them, showing the ultimate futility. War reaches every home as women operate heavy machinery. Propaganda posters cover the factory walls urging support. Narrator contextualizes the home effort while typewriters click. The camera pulls back to show the immense scale of industrial output. Women operate heavy machinery in factories, rapidly producing artillery shells. Walls are plastered with bold, emotional propaganda posters urging continued support. War reaches every home. Men fight, women build, children hope. The camera pulls back, showing the immense scale of industrial output. Massive early model tanks crawl through deep, muddy trenches. Above, biplanes engage in vicious dogfights through dense clouds. Distant zeppelins drop ordnance on sleeping cities at night. Narrator observes that innovation turns into annihilation. Massive, early model tanks crawl through deep trenches filled with mud. Above, biplanes engage in sharp, close-range dogfights against billowing clouds. Simultaneously, distant zeppelins are seen dropping ordnance on sleeping cities. Innovation turns into annihilation. A trembling hand writes, "If I don't come back." Soft, melancholic violin music begins to swell underneath the scene. Narrator speaks with deep emotion, their final words. The finished letter curls and burns slowly, symbolizing the end. A soldier's hand, trembling slightly, writes, "If I don't come back." Soft, melancholic violin music begins to swell underneath the scene. Their final words, written in fear, love, and resignation. The scene transitions into a slow-motion shot of the finished letter curling and burning at the edges. Verdun. 10 months of hell. 700,000 casualties for a few miles of earth. Men crawl through shattered concrete forts. Narrator emphasizes the immense cost of the battle. Slow zoom onto discarded, mud-caked helmets and broken equipment. Verdun. 10 months of hell. 700,000 casualties for a few miles of earth. Men crawl through shattered forts, clinging to the earth. The cost of battle is etched onto the ruined earth. The weight of Verdun rests upon the silence that follows the barrage. The environment is defined by heavy smoke, absolute ruin, and ceaseless gunfire. Men are seen crawling through the shattered remnants of concrete forts. Verdun. 10 months of hell. 700,000 casualties for a few miles of earth. The camera performs a slow zoom onto discarded, mud-caked helmets and broken military equipment scattered on the ground. Sharp whistles blow repeatedly, signaling the advance. Waves of soldiers charge out across barren, no-man's land. They are immediately mown down by sustained machine gun fire. The Somme. July 1916, 58,000 British casualties in one day. A helmet falls in slow motion amidst the carnage. Whistles blow. Soldiers charge across no man's land. Machine guns mow them down. 58,000 British casualties in one day. The Somme. July 1916. The sound of machine guns is overwhelming. A helmet falls in slow motion. Rows of wounded men lie on cots under flickering lantern light. Overworked, nurses work under lantern light, maintaining order. Instruments clatter, whispers mix with prayers in the distance. Narrator states medicine struggles against the flood of death. Medicine struggles against the flood of death. Instruments clatter, whispers mix with prayers. Overworked nurses strive to maintain order amidst the chaos. A young soldier sits rigidly in silence, eyes empty. They called it shell shock, the invisible wound no doctor could see. The harsh battlefield light softens into flickering candlelight. The image fades to candlelight. They called it shell shock, the invisible wound no doctor could see. A soldier trembles in silence, eyes empty. The image fades to candlelight. Rain and mud dominate the landscape of 1916's end. Soldiers stare blankly from the parapets, reflecting utter depletion. An ominous rumble of thunder rolls across the sky. As narrator concludes, 1916 ends with no victor, only exhaustion. 1916 ends with no victor, only exhaustion. Rain and mud, soldiers staring blankly from trenches. Thunder rolls. Newer, heavier tanks push forward across the ravaged landscape. Soldiers wielding flamethrowers unleash terrifying bursts of fire. The scene cuts between the powerful flames and terrified eyes. As narrator notes, desperation breeds new tools of destruction. Desperation breeds new tools of destruction as massive tanks move forward. Flamethrowers ignite the enemy trenches with terrifying bursts of fire. The flames reflect in the terrified eyes of the opposing soldiers. As narrator, desperation breeds new tools of destruction. Desperation breeds new tools of destruction. Tanks crawl through mud, flamethrowers ignite trenches. Flames reflect in terrified eyes. Beneath the waves, a new battlefield emerges. Submarines launch torpedoes at ships. Explosions tear through the sea. Beneath the waves, a new battlefield emerges, the U-boat war. Silent submarines launch torpedoes at unsuspecting ships on the surface. Massive, muffled explosions tear through the hulls of ships. As narrator, beneath the waves, a new battlefield emerges. Submarines are shown silently maneuvering beneath the dark, turbulent ocean. They launch torpedoes at unsuspecting merchant or naval vessels on the surface. Explosions tear through the sea as torpedoes connect. As narrator describes the new battlefield emerging beneath the waves. Biplanes engage in vicious dogfights through dense layers of cloud cover. A specific focus is placed on the famous Red Baron's plane diving daringly. The sky becomes a new frontier of heroism and death. Planes spiral down in smoke, crashing out of the sky. Biplanes engage in vicious dogfights through dense layers of cloud. A specific focus is placed on the famous Red Baron's plane diving. As narrator frames the sky as a new frontier of heroism and death. Several aircraft spiral out of control, trailing thick black smoke. Empires fall, a new power rises as 1917 turns the tide. The map dissolves as U.S. troops march confidently through French villages. As narrator, empires fall, a new power rises. Animated map shows Russia withdrawing and America entering the war. As narrator highlights the geopolitical shift, empires fall, a new power rises. Map dissolves to U.S. troops marching confidently through French villages. Fresh American soldiers arrive, their uniforms crisp and faces optimistic. They march with purpose toward the waiting front lines. As narrator introduces them. They called them doughboys young, eager, and unbroken. They called them doughboys young, eager, and unbroken by years of war. The contrast is stark, the eagerness of the new arrivals versus the seasoned veterans. The American soldiers march with purpose toward the front lines. 1917 revolution ends an empire. Revolutionaries fill the snowy streets, their faces set with determination. Russia withdraws, leaving the East in silence. protesters fill the snowy streets of Petrograd with red flags. Revolution ends an empire. Russia withdraws, leaving the East in silence. The focus zooms in on the determined faces of the revolutionary crowds. In Petrograd, protesters fill the snowy streets under a gray winter sky. At narrator, 1917 revolution ends an empire. Russia withdraws, leaving the East in silence. Revolutionary crowds surge through the square as state authority collapses. The transition shows the emptiness left on the Eastern Front as troops depart. Science outpaces humanity, progress drenched in suffering. Soldiers blinded by gas are led blindly by overworked medics through the chaos. The sheer helplessness of the victims is emphasized in the desolate environment. Close up on soldiers blinded by gas, stumbling in chaos. Medics struggle to guide the sightless men through the barrage. At narrator, science outpaces humanity, progress drenched in suffering. A discarded, gas-soaked mask lies abandoned in the mud. Close-up of soldiers, blinded by gas, led by medics. Science outpaces humanity, progress drenched in suffering. The visuals emphasize the physical damage and helplessness of the victims. The sound of Allied artillery reaches a deafening crescendo across France. Soldiers advance slowly through heavy, obscuring smoke. At narrator, the end approaches not with peace, but with exhaustion. A small platoon pushes forward through the haze towards the German lines. Allied artillery thunder echoes across France in 1918. Soldiers advance slowly through heavy, obscuring smoke and fog. At narrator foreshadows the end approaches, not with peace, but exhaustion. Officers gather in the specific railway carriage at Compiègne. The final signature is placed on the armistice agreement on the 11th of November 1918. At narrator, at the 11th hour, the guns fall silent. On the front lines, soldiers embrace through tears as church bells ring. Officers sign the armistice agreement in the train car at Compiègne. At the 11th hour, the guns fall silent. Soldiers embrace through tears as bells ring across the landscape. Cities are shown reduced to skeletal ruins across Europe. Widows dressed in black mourn over the graves of their lost ones. Injured soldiers begin the slow, painful journey home, often with missing limbs. At narrator, the war to end all wars left 20 million dead and sowed the seeds of the next. Cities are reduced to skeletal ruins and widows wear black. Injured soldiers limp home, often missing limbs. At narrator states the war left 20 million dead and sowed seeds for the next. Their voices still echo through history, a reminder of the price of pride. Sunset over endless fields of white crosses. A reminder of the price of pride. World War I, Voices from the Trenches. A slow, expansive shot overlooks endless fields marked by white crosses. At narrator, their voices still echo through history, a reminder of the price of pride. The orchestral soundtrack begins a slow, deliberate fade to silence. White text overlay appears. World War I, Voices from the Trenches. Slow, expansive shot over endless fields of white crosses under a setting sun. At narrator delivers the final thought, their voices still echo through history. Slow orchestral fade, text on screen, World War I, Voices from the Trenches.